A Quinnipiac survey revealed that a whopping one-third of Americans believe the U.S. is doing too much to help Ukraine. This is up from 7% in February 2022. Let's get into the article. Poll indicates big change in American attitude to Ukraine aid. 33% believe the U.S. is doing too much to help Kiev, a Quinnipiac survey has found. A third of Americans believe that the U.S. has gone too far in its support for Ukraine in the present conflict. According to a new poll released on Wednesday, this is a sharp increase from late February, days after the conflict broke out, when just 7% said so. According to Quinnipiac University National Survey, 33% of adult respondents think Washington is doing too much to help Kiev, while 21% say the U.S. is doing too little. 38% believe the amount of American aid is just right. 1,659, about 1,650 adults nationwide were surveyed between January 11 and January 15. By comparison, in a similar poll released on February 28, 2022, 4 days after large-scale hostilities began, only 7% of Americans said the U.S. was doing too much to help Ukraine, while 45% believed Washington's aid was inadequate. 37% thought the support being provided to Kiev was sufficient. The new survey also shows a total of 44% of Americans approve of the way U.S. President Joe Biden is handling the Ukraine conflict, with respondents sharply divided along partisan lines. 47% disapprove of Biden's actions on Ukraine, with 73% of Republicans supporting this view as opposed to just 16% of Democrats. However, the poll also found that only 3% of Americans think the fighting in Ukraine is, quote, the most urgent issue facing the country today, because it's not. 3%, that's about right. 3%, it's not. We have so much homelessness. We have so much people that are houseless, that are on the streets, that are not getting the funding that they need and deserve, that are not getting the financial support from the country that they need and deserve. So many people are homeless. The overwhelming majority of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And so they're not concerned about Ukraine. What they're concerned about is putting food on the table, feeding their families. Ukraine is a distant thought to them, and to me as well. I share that opinion. A lot of Americans are struggling financially, and we do not see. I read a poll a few weeks ago about how at least 80% of Americans are pessimistic about this year, 2023, when it comes to not just taxes, but their economic futures and the job market. Just yesterday, I talked about how the tech industry was cutting jobs, at least 200,000 in total, from Google, Amazon, Facebook/Meta, Twitter, Salesforce, letting people go, firing them. That was just yesterday that I talked about that story. And again, a few weeks ago, I did a story about how Americans are pessimistic about 2023. They don't see it getting better. And yet here we are funding Ukraine to the tune of billions of dollars. What the hell is America doing right now? The most pressing problems named were inflation, 35%, immigration, 10%, and gun violence, 8%. The top U.S. priority, inflation is a concern, but it's thankfully going down. Immigration and gun violence, gun violence, I would say, is kind of a concern. But right now, it's people putting food on the table, people not believing that the future is going to look bright for them. Financially, people are living paycheck to paycheck in America. That is their main concern. The future, the economic and financial future of Americans, that's their main concern. The top U.S. priority should be funding and arming Ukraine so it can beat Russia on the battlefield, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell stated in December. Several other Republicans argued that the crisis at the U.S. southern border, which has seen record numbers of illegal migrant crossings, should be the main focus. Since Russia began its special operation, the U.S. has contributed about $27.5 billion in military assistance to Ukraine. As of November 20, Washington has also committed approximately $10 billion in humanitarian aid and over $15 billion in financial assistance, according to the Kiev Institute for the World Economy. Last month, the U.S. House of Representatives narrowly rejected a bill calling for an audit of economic and military assistance to Kiev. The massive scale of U.S. military aid has reportedly put the Pentagon's own law enforcement agency on high alert for black market sales of weaponry and other potential fraud. Yeah, we spent $27.5 billion assisting this war that's going to continue between Ukraine and Russia, when we can't even spend, that much on our own people. And so many Americans are living on the street. So many Americans are having anxiety and concern about where their next meal is going to come from. The funding towards people who are homeless and people who are one step away from homelessness, it's not as high. They cut funding, the U.S. government did. And so, with all of these issues, Ukraine is the last thing people are thinking about. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, let me know what you think about this story, leave a like. If you're listening to this on the podcast, tweet me, let me know what you think there. Take care.